Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right. So I was just listening to Colin Coward and Jason Timpf have a conversation about Draymond Green and the whole thing, whether or not he should be suspended, should have been suspended for Game 3, which will be coming up in San Francisco, I believe, today or tomorrow. I'm not really sure. I'm not following the series in that regard as closely as my own, a Laker fan. But nevertheless, I didn't give you guys an opinion on whether or not he should be suspended. I more so gave you an opinion on whether or not he was in the wrong, what I thought about Sabonis and what I thought his part in this was. But I didn't really break down what I thought the league's point of view was about and whether or not I agreed with their point of view. I don't think I really touched in on that. I was more so interested in just kind of holding everybody who was involved accountable and just looking at the whole thing and just saying, Dre, you know the league is going to do this, so you need to control that. That's my angle. But as far as what the league did and whether or not I agree with that, seems to be a real topic around the conversation. Listen to Stephen A. He had strong points on it. Of course, these two guys had strong points on it as well. So I figured, okay, let me see if anybody gives a dang what I think about this in regards to the league and what their responsibility was. At the end of the day, for me, I looked at that and I said, what I cannot let happen at the end of the day is someone stepping on someone's ribs as big as Draymond is. It's not about whether or not I thought Sabonis was hurt. It's not about whether or not I thought Draymond's leg was held. My concern was if that much pressure goes down on somebody's rib, you could really injure them in a very serious way. Very serious way. And while Dre probably had it under control and Sabonis is probably big enough to handle it, those are not the people I'm worried about. I'm worried about the next guys who may think that that's okay if the league doesn't go off and treat the situation that seriously. Now, I think in listening to Colin Coward and Jason Timpf, their point of view was the league is more so concerned about the malice of the palace type of injury, or energy rather. They didn't want the whole inciting the crowd. Adam Silver was in the arena, for which I didn't even know he was there. And I think that has a lot to do with it, just the overall safety of it. You don't want a repeat of that. You don't want him inciting the crowd. You don't want him going toward fans and just kind of getting into it because you don't know if fans are going to try something. You just don't want an incident to be possible. In a playoff game, especially when E40 was just kicked out of the building the night before, or the game before rather. So the whole energy there is just a little tense in that way. You just don't need him as a player engaging with fans in an opposite arena, that kind of thing. If he was at home, it wouldn't have been any kind of problem. He wouldn't have had no hecklers. He would have been, it would have been like Kobe after we won the championship. He stood on the stanchion and we screamed, and it was like a glorious moment for everybody who loved the moment. But the reality is, Dre was on some other stuff. He was doing that against people who were screaming and hollering at him, and he had just made a mistake that hurt himself and his team real bad, and it was already very sensitive. The best thing he should have did was run off the court. But at the same time, I hear Stephen A's point of view and all of that. I hear, this is a playoff game. It's going to cost a lot of money. Some of this is the players' money, and it's the fans who get to suffer. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of what it is that I would say. I think I had a similar point of view in regards to the scheduling this year and why the NBA would allow back-to-backs in situations with the Lakers playing in New York and in Brooklyn back-to-back, knowing that AD and Bron don't play back-to-backs. You cheated Brooklyn fans out of potential Bron and AD games. Now, I think Bron actually did play in both of those games, but it's just the point. It's like, that's not something that you should otherwise do if you're trying to better your overall opportunity to please fans and get the most out of the revenue for those particular matchups. So I see that as a very big point of view, and sometimes, I just think that the NBA takes a greater stance. I kind of felt the same way about Rudy Gobert being suspended for getting punched, or rather for punching Kyle Anderson. I just felt like, the team, not the league, but the team themselves were kind of counterproductive in suspending the player because they had done so much to get the player, and it was so much controversy surrounding the transaction itself, and then from there, having the player not be available for pretty much the very matchup they would otherwise pick him up for, which is to go up against Anthony Davis and the Lakers in a playoffs play-in type situation. So for them to suspend him for the one and done play-in game against the Lakers with Anthony Davis just seemed like the most counterproductive thing to do for the sake of being responsible in regards to your policy about punching people. It just seemed empty to me. And it's the exact same argument that I think Stephen A is making here. However, I don't look at Rudy Gobert punching Kyle Anderson in the lower end of his shoulder, upper half of his chest, the same thing. I don't, as Draymond Green potentially stepping on somebody's chest and letting his full body weight compress off of it. Pushing off of somebody's chest with your body weight for what I thought was the ribs when I saw it in real time, that right there told me, even if those two got it together, if I don't come down on them, there will be a precedent set that this type of action should not otherwise provide that type of punishment, and thus not taking this seriously, in my opinion. So that's kind of why I'm okay with it coming down this way. As soon as I saw him do that, I figured he would probably be suspended. It didn't take long for me to understand it. An ejection was immediate, and the way this is going, and then when he ran over there and started screaming at the crowd, initially as he had gotten up and done that, I'm thinking in my head, he's making this worse. So you got to understand, I don't know that the way I'm looking at this is much different than the way Joe Dumars is looking at this. I think I'm kind of on their side, because it's just like, it's not about whether Dre hurt Sabonis. It's about the next time something like this happens, will I have the right to suspend that dude, or will they harken back to this, as to which they say, well, look at Draymond, we'll show you the footage, and Draymond stepped on him, and you didn't suspend Draymond, and it was a playoff game. So our guy, who just broke homie's ribs, should not be suspended for 40 games. So you see what I'm saying? And this is the precedent that you set. This is what you're setting yourself up for if you're the league, as opposed to a couple people on TV saying, you're messing up a playoff game because you suspended a guy who did something that got himself suspended. And while a lot of people are bringing up the point like, oh, you don't want to suspend him for the playoff game because it's different and it means more to the team, and you don't want to punish the fans. And it's like, no, you don't understand. You guys are missing the point. When you come down on somebody that hard in these pressured moments, you're setting a precedent for them to understand, and anybody that comes after them, that you are ruining your playoff chances by doing this. You are effectively getting yourself removed and removing your team for an opportunity to compete. It's going to be on you. Blame Dre for why your season is messed up, and that is his punishment for all of this. That's what essentially the NBA is doing. All that it matters, in the fullness that it matters so much, yeah, you're supposed to take that and blame him. And he's supposed to take that and be blamed, and then from there, the next guy is supposed to be too afraid to do anything like that in a playoff game because he knows it's going to be his fault that it didn't work out for his team, because they definitely will suspend you in a playoff game if you do this. So it's like, I understand the fear they're trying to instill in those who would ever try to do something like this again. It's a true deterrent. You can't let a guy play in a playoff game with all that's on the line in a game that you would otherwise suspend him in the regular season or the preseason for the same exact reason that Stephen A. Smith is arguing that you should. It's because when people think it's okay to do certain things, they will ruin the environment of the playoffs. When they think it's okay to play WWF in the playoffs, guys will hurt each other in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And then from there, you have a ruined situation where they will have moments which you just are not going to want to see. Things that are going to tumble forward to set precedents that otherwise allow people to think that they can do stuff that they should not be doing in the regular season when it matters most, because they're not going to get reprimanded, because it matters more to the overall conglomerate that these games be played with them on the floor than that they do what they need to do to uphold what it is they're supposed to be doing on that floor. You don't want to set that precedent. You're going to have way more interesting minds coming down the pipeline that these precedents are going to have to be in place strong to keep under control. You just got to know it. You just got to know it. Not everybody can be funneled into an environment where there's a lot of ambiguity in regards to what is standard, because they will take advantage. They will come in with their quirkiness and their intelligence, and they will make things bad. They will make things very bad. And because I understand this fully, I'm not mad at the league. In fact, I probably would have suspended him as well, and y'all would have been mad at me. But I also understand that I got all these kids coming into the league. Who knows how strong they're going to be? Who knows where their head is at? And if they think it's okay to step on somebody's ribs because they saw Draymond do it, then I'm going to have a problem with them tomorrow. And a problem I'm not going to allow myself to have if I can do something about it today. So Dre going to have to fall on that sword, bro. You got to fall on that. And look, I don't think Sabonis should have been suspended for a game for holding his leg. And I'm going to tell you why. I don't think Sabonis shouldn't have gotten any more than a flagrant 1 for that. I think they got that right. Why? Because I just watched Anthony Davis had it happen to him in a previous game. He fell to the floor. Somebody held him down. It happens once every 3 games to the Lakers. I kid you not. And it don't be no incident, because people know if you fall underneath the opponent's basket, they're going to stay down with you to keep you from going back down the other end. I've seen Dre do it. That's the thing that throws me off. He's so offended by it happening. Dude, I've seen you do that to people. I've literally seen you collapse underneath the other basket and hold the guy that you fell down next to from coming down the other end to play defense, or going down the other end to get on the offensive play. It's a part of the game. It's part of the game. Those who don't watch the game very much may not know that, but what Sabonis did to Dre, it happens every 3 games, y'all. That's what you do. You keep him from going down there in the same latency of the play. You know how we talk about latency of the play? Hustling back. Why it's so important to hustle back? Because you got to get back there on time. You got to get back there to help while things are happening. If he can keep him from coming back down there for a good 2 or 3 seconds, that's a good 2 or 3 seconds. His team got an advantage. That's all it takes to break up a play or get a bucket. So that's strategy. Now, if they don't call it. Now, if they do call it, all bets off. You getting called for a foul. But 9 out of 10 times, that's never called. And it doesn't really last very long. It's usually a guy just kind of holding the guy's leg like the bonus is for only a time to keep that guy from going down court so he can be a part of the play. Because at the end of the day, you're down 2. So that leaves your guys even if you can keep this guy from coming down, especially if you can keep him from getting down there quicker than you can. And so that's really what it came down to. Sabonis essentially was doing what I see players do all the time, which is why I was a little frustrated with Dre for being so demonstrative in regards to how frustrated he was with it not being called, because it never gets called. And I guess that was the point. It had happened to him in the previous game where Malik Monk apparently had held his foot and he didn't appreciate it. But I'm like, bro, you taught the league how to do that. I ain't never seen nobody do that before. The Golden State Warriors probably did it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, when you start, this is what it comes down to. And I'll tell you the same thing that I said about LeBron James. You just got to pick your battles when it comes to these refs. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason at all for you to want something to be okay when you do it, but then to throw a complete tantrum when somebody else does it. And then from there, you get mad at the referees for or get mad at the league for reacting in the way that they're supposed to when you react a certain way. You know, if you don't stomp that man's chest, you don't get suspended. You don't get thrown out the game. Like that is what it comes down to. So what you got to do in your position is something that doesn't bring the attention to you that would otherwise prompt them to do what it is they're prone to do. And that's really the only point of view that's relevant to me. With all due respect to Stephen A. and all these guys who are coming to the league saying, no, you're not supposed to suspend him. The league didn't suspend him. He suspended himself by doing that. Which is the whole point. The league did what it's supposed to do with the precedent that was set prior to the incident. This is what they do when you do that. Plus, when you have prior offenses, which is a consistency that I see. Because they did it to Boogie, they did it to Rasheed, they do it to a lot of guys who are repeat offenders. If you repeat offend, it's going to come down harder on you. Maybe they don't suspend Malik Monk if he does the same thing, because he's not a guy who's done this before. And mind you, People were saying he did this 7 years ago. He did this 7 years ago in the finals. Since people want to put an emphasis on when this is being done, it's the first round of the playoffs right now. He's a repeat offender who did it in the finals 7 years ago. So when you want to say, oh, it's been 7 years, yeah, but it wasn't a game against the Magic. It was a game against LeBron that led to his team losing the game 6 that he was suspended for. That is a big deal. That expands the timeline for which this is acceptable in my mind. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if 7 years ago he did this against the Orlando Magic, I'm like, bro, that ain't cost nothing. That ain't necessarily a repeat offense because he didn't do this in a big moment in the playoffs. He did it in the finals. It was a bigger moment than this. Hence why it's a repeat offense. Hence why the 7 years ain't a big deal. So it's when you do something, it's like having understanding of the tone you're in. It's the tone. Where are we at? We are in the playoffs. We're in Sacramento. It's the home of cowbells. Anybody remembers the cowbells? They had problems with them fans back there. And from what I understand, they just banned them from using them cowbells this year because they wanted to start that bull crap up again. This is not the place to do that in. You know what I mean? That's like going up to Detroit and having an issue in the stands with a fan right now. There's certain places you can't do it there. You know what I mean? And so it's just like him not having no tone, no sense of what time it is as it pertains to what it is that's acceptable. And I blame the organization. I was listening to the GM and they were talking about, asking him what he thought. No accountability, nothing in regards to holding Dre accountable for nothing. It's just like, well, if we're gonna suspend, they're gonna suspend him, and there's nothing we can do about that. So we're just gonna live with that. And it's like, okay, but any acknowledgement for the fact that this guy just literally removed himself from a series that y'all likely are gonna lose because he just did it? No, y'all gonna lose together then. All right, cool. You know what I mean? And the fans suffer for it. So it just seems to me that it's like they've been sitting there for a long time allowing this to go down this way. And I know that the media, some of them are trying to get in good with Dre because they know Dre got our ears. So whatever he's going to do, it's going to work out. So it's like they can wage war with new media or they can get chummy with new media. And I think some of them are like, let's get chummy with him because we can see where this is going. And my thing is, I don't give a crap about that. I'm not in that world. So I'm gonna tell y'all what's real to me. I'm not coming down on the effect guys. That's the cause guy is the one who needs the attention, not the effect. The effect guy is Joe Dumars and the Players Association. They got their own politics they got to deal with. When you start doing certain things that bring them into the situation, you got to deal with what comes with that. That's the bigger picture for me. Do I think Joe Dumars specifically wanted to suspend Draymond Green for this? Hell no. That's Joe Dumars. He's doing his job. Believe me, Joe Dumars would have stomped on you too. We know that. He was a bad boy Piston. That's why it's so funny. Because it's like, Joe Dumars. But Joe Dumars is doing his job and he's doing it right. And he understands the bigger picture. Just like I do. You know what I'm saying? And you do certain things, you're going to get suspended. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get this off my head. But it's like, that's what it really comes down to. You're going to do certain things. You're going to involve them. And now they're gonna do what they're supposed to do. It's just like dealing with street situations. You're gonna do something bad, people gonna call the cops, and you gotta deal with the cops. Now, whatever happened after that, it can go a lot of different ways. But if you do what you're supposed to do and don't get them called, maybe it can go your way. But once you start going into the arena where they start getting called, hey, you can go a lot of different ways after that. And so it's like, who am I getting mad at? Is it the cause, or is it gonna be the effect guys? Whatever happened, whoever's gets called and now they got to do whatever they doing with their stuff. You don't bring them into your situation, you never got to worry about that. And so that's really what it comes down to, man. People got to do what they need to do to help themselves and not get on the effect guys who come in to just basically lay down the law. You know what I mean? And it's a different point of view for me when I look at organizations as it pertains to like the Minnesota Timberwolves and they do it because they didn't involve the law. Adam Silver's the law. Joe Dumars the law. These organizations, some of them can police themselves, and I think it's probably encouraged. But some stuff is just counterproductive to what your organization and what your investment is, which is why I specifically looked at the Minnesota Timberwolves and said you shouldn't have suspended Rudy Gobert. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would have never done that, and they got away with it. So I guess it all worked out. But it's just something I wouldn't have done. But the league got to hold. They got to have a broader scope. they can't afford to just look at something like this and say, okay, we got to deal with this because the playoffs. Nah, you got about 40 years of players, 30 teams each, to police with a standard that's going to be questioned every time you waver from it. That's the fullness of what the NBA is dealing with. It can't, you know what I mean? It can't be looking at just your little team and say, okay, well, we're in the playoffs this year, so yeah, let's let him stomp him out. This should be fine. Like, no, that's not what the NBA can afford to let be the case. Now, that in and of itself can be manipulated because people know that precedent is in place, so they do stuff they ain't got no business doing within that. But I don't perceive this to being that. I don't perceive this being that. I think this is pretty damn fair. And if Dre wouldn't have did this 7 years ago in the finals, if he wouldn't have had certain issues outside of that kind of keep this going, on top of probably the new media thing, which probably brought him some attention he didn't want. And it's just a lot of stuff. It's like, Dre, when you give people a lot of ammo and you run unapologetic, and you run around telling people you're going to do this, and this, what you definitely can't do is hurt yourself. Because then you're going to let them same people who didn't like what you had to say have everything they need to do to kick you out. You down. You know what I'm saying? And that's human nature. They don't like you? Okay, now we get to go over here. Let's see how he's doing. He ain't doing too good. How they kick him? That's how it goes. Because when you was up and you was doing all that stuff they ain't like, you was unapologetic. You was doing your thing. So there's a reaction to that. It's the same thing I said about the Memphis Grizzlies. People gonna enjoy seeing y'all lose because y'all always run around like everything is. You're never humble about nothing. Everybody needs to bow at your feet and all that for whatever reason, regardless if it's up to our standards of you winning or not. That's not the point. Y'all crass. You'll run around acting like you've done something you ain't done. People don't like it. So when you lose, it's going to be parade in our cities. Everybody's cities. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, that's just how it goes. When you ask for that, that's what you get. I say the same thing about the Heatles. First year when Braun was trying to be a villain. Everybody hated him. He wanted it. So when you got booed in every arena, it was like, bro, that's what you're asking for. You are welcoming that energy. You and your team wanted to be hated. So when y'all lost and collapsed, people were celebrating it. And years after that, when you move on to different teams, people still giving you that energy. It's still cutting off your murals, telling you ain't nothing. Why? Because you asked for that. 6ix9ine, same thing. He getting beat up 3 and 4 years after he did that stuff. Why? Because he asked for that. I'm telling you, it never wavers, no matter what walk of life. You ask for the wrong stuff, believe me, you're going to welcome it. Unapologetic, yeah. Later is what it's really going to be for you. Later, right now it's cool. That's a passing moment. But later's going to last. When they kicking you while you down, that's going to feel like a long time. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I say to Dre. That's exactly what I say to Dre. You're, as I said in the video, a leader. You done won all the championships. When I look at Dylan Brooks, I say, you're doing the wrong thing because look at what Dre did. And then I look at what Dre, and Dre's doing the same thing. Like, well, Dylan, just keep doing what you're doing. And that's the point. That's the point. I look at Dre, and anything I don't like about Dylan Brooks, I can blame Dre because he was the one who came before him, showed him how to do it. You know, just by example. And so it's like, examples matter. And Dre needs to understand that that's the precedent that he's setting, and that's the NBA's precedent as well when they react whatever way they do to whatever it is he does. They all are being watched by youngsters, little people who can't wait to get into your position so they can do whatever it is they can get away with. Whatever it is they can get away with. Let's make that very clear. So you don't let them get away with that type of stuff. So they don't set the precedent that it's okay to do any of this nonsense themselves for the youngins that have come after them. You know what I mean? You imagine if they would have let Javaris Crittenton and Gilbert Arenas just walk in with the guns in the arena, no problem. You know how bad it probably would have gotten if they wouldn't have set a certain precedent by now? You don't even think about it. Salute the Kobe minute. But like that's the point. It's not about the subjects at hand. So goes the same with anytime you see somebody sentenced to 1,000,000 years, that ain't got nothing to do with their crime. It's about deterring anybody else from ever doing that as many times as necessary. As many times as necessary. How many life sentences do they need to give for the rest of us to understand that we don't want to have no parts of that stuff? That's what it's about. 7, 8 consecutive life sentences. He's never getting out. But they're going to let you know he got 400 years. Just in case he's the one single person that happens to live like Methuselah, his ass ain't getting out. So you know that will happen to you if you do what he did. So if y'all don't understand examples and the importance of those examples, look at the kids. BDL 44. I'll take you off watching.